You're looking at a photo of my friend Matt Henriksen. Matt runs Bart's Books in Ojai, which is the largest outdoor bookstore in the world. I highly recommend you check it out. It was great hanging out with Matt today. I don't see him very often. And we enjoyed each other's company so much that after the camera stopped, we talked for another 2 or 3 hours. It's actually hard for me to remember even what we talked about while the cameras were rolling, because we did more talking afterwards. So this episode is broken into 2 parts. The first part is us at the table, and the second part is us watching the sunset with the cows up the hill. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you'll go to Bart's Books. And I just wanted to say that I'm happy to be alive on the same planet with Matt. This is his favorite.
Good neighbors.
They're really sweet. The cows, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. They're mostly quiet at night.
Except for one time, man. One came right down, and it was... Have you ever heard a cow scream before? Oh, man. I didn't know they did that. This cow was just right there, just screaming at the top of his lungs. And I came out, and I just looked at him like, what's going on, man? He looked at me like... It was like that scream, that painting, you know?
Yeah.
He was just like, I didn't know you were here.
Did he settle down after that, or did he keep going?
No, he stopped. Yeah. And then another night, some coyotes came down to the fence, and they were same thing. They were just freaking out, and I couldn't tell if some of them had gotten through and one got left behind. So he was like, where'd you go? Where'd you go? And he was spazzing out too. But other than that, not too many bizarre.
Yeah, I can't imagine they were looking for cows. That seems a little bit big for them.
And they haven't got my cat either. He's somewhere around here.
Yeah.
He's got a hurt leg, but maybe that's why he's hiding out.
Feeling sensitive.
He's been in a weird mood lately, man. Which for me, like, I love my cats so much that when they're acting weird, I'm just like, you know, any little change in behavior. You know how cats go through a phase, and then sometimes they'll just sleep for a month. And others, like, I remember when I first got cats and they would do that, I would just genuinely worry, like, what's going on with Meg? She's been sleeping. It's like they go up and down in their phases of what they're into, you know. But I didn't know that. I didn't have cats growing up.
They're like people.
They're like people.
Yeah.
I guess if I have a first question, it would be the same that I always wonder. How did we meet? Do you know how we met?
Yeah, I went and saw you play music. We have our mutual friend Dustin invited me along.
Okay, where was it?
I believe it was in Santa Barbara. You were still with a band called the Petite Protest. Yeah.
And it was at one of the little coffee shops or something?
I have no idea. That's over 10 years ago. It was before you had the Certain Sparks.
Wow.
So how long have you had that? 15 years?
Uh-huh.
So it was over 15. It was over 15 years ago.
Wild.
So I would have been, at the oldest 26, 27.
Now, did you ever play music?
I played the trombone for a year and a half, 2 years. Elementary school, and then junior high, and then I quit because it wasn't cool enough.
I played sax and clarinet, and I played clarinet in the 5th grade, maybe for a year, and then middle school I got into saxophone, and then when I got to high school I thought, it's not cool enough. I want to be cool. And I look back now, because I just started playing the saxophone again, and I'm like, I really, really wish I would have just kept playing it. I don't know what that was all about. And I even played it a little since then. And whenever I played it, I really liked it. And I always wondered, what really was that all about? I don't know. I guess the pull of the guitar was so strong.
I mean, it's the coolest instrument.
And you never played an instrument, but you were always passionate about music, or?
I love music, yeah.
Do you have, I know this is a silly question, but...
I was going to say, the only reason I played a trombone is because I had one already. And our school didn't have a lot of, instruments to kids that were broker. So that was my option.
And you played trombone for how long?
A year and a half in the school band. Didn't make it to the high school marching band, which I would be a completely different person if I'd done that.
Any good or bad memories from playing trombone?
The only memory I have is we had an instructor named Mr. Ainsworth. And he had this instruction when he was giving instruction, like, put your instrument in your lap when you're not going to play it so you don't accidentally play it on purpose. That was it. Just try to keep the class quiet so we could lecture. I remember learning, some very basic music theory stuff, how to read music and all that for like a year.
Since I started teaching music, it occurs to me that people make music unnecessarily complicated when they try to get people to start playing. Because obviously it's endless. There's endless amount of information about how to play and what to play and all that. But the first thing that seems like you should do is play and enjoy it as soon as possible. Because then you're more motivated to figure out why and all the technique. But I look back on school band and I go, really, what was it all about? Maybe we were playing better than I thought. I don't know. But it seemed to me that there was a lot more talking about playing than there was playing.
Did you read any of that Mingus biography yet?
I did. I started it and it was so good that I had to stop.
Yeah.
Because I said, this is going to be one of my favorite books. I'm going to have to save it.
Yeah. Did you get to the part where he's playing in the like municipal band in downtown Los Angeles?
Yes.
That's one of my favorite parts. This discussion when he's describing how he never learned to read music, even when he was playing in this community band for youths. He never learned how to read music. He was playing by ear and faking it the entire time. It was an orchestra, actually.
I told you, but his rhythm in his writing, it was just so. It was like his music. It was so perfectly spaced and so pleasant and so surprising. And his views on things were so non-traditional in everything. I mean, everything. Race, whatever he would talk about. He would sort of... Man, I just loved what I read, but I had to stop. It was too much for me.
There's a portion later. It's been so long since I've read that book. Probably I probably read it first right around the time that I saw you play music for the first time. Wow. But I don't remember the exact line, but either him or his friend is going to or getting out of a mental institution, and he has this line about how people feel about themselves. I think it's... I'm not going to try to quote it because I'll get it wrong, but when you get to that part,
cool.
Give me a call.
I will.
See how you feel about that. But yeah, he has non-traditional views about everything.
And we'll stay on that for just a second, because it seems like something about Mingus... There's something about the... What's that word for when... What's the word... what's that word that Joseph Campbell talks about all the time?
In regards to what?
Like archetypes and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe I'm looking for archetype.
Yeah.
But it seems like his life and the frustration of his life and when he was born and all the coincidences of race in this country, and I'm going to call it coincidences in terms of timing.
Yeah.
And you've seen the footage of him getting evicted and stuff like that, and it just seems like somehow that speaks to what so many artists experience in terms of not being appreciated and sort of being thrown into a culture where no one knows what to do with you, even though you have the greatest of gifts, and somehow you have to stay, you keep from getting bitter, even though you know that you're not getting what you deserve. And his life just seems to be, I mean, that's so many artists' lives, but his life in particular seems like it represents what that means for Americans. Yeah. Particularly well.
And you talk about like how artists navigate their lives, but I think it's really true of everybody. Like, you get bitter or you don't. Some portion of it's up to you, and some portion of it's dependent on what happens to you and how you meet that. And like, you don't get to choose any of it. I mean, that's true for a lot of people.
Have you ever been very, very bitter?
Yeah, a lot. I would say that a good portion of my middle age has become, you know, everybody goes through that. They like try to figure out what is this all about? What am I about? And I think a big portion for me has been like giving up or trying to find a way to give up being resentful about even being alive. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I used to think, you know, they say, you know, like, you know, I didn't ask to be born, you know. I would always think of that, like, you know, what does it mean to have two parents who get together and then create you and then sort of just leave you to figure it out? It was such a strange thing to do. And I remember thinking, like, I just don't think I would have, I just don't think this is where I want to be for a long time. And then I had to sort of say, well, what if that's what this is? It's like doing something you didn't really want to do. I mean, that's a reoccurring theme in my life. How to do something you don't want to do with a little bit of style and grace.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that could be the whole thing. That could be what I'm working on.
That spiteful teenager that I didn't ask to be born thing, that's almost precisely resentment.
Yeah.
And for most teenagers, it's like intensified because their emotions are all out of control, and usually for appropriate reasons. But when you think about the question, your being here probably had nothing to do with you. it was about them. And probably at one point they probably loved each other, and they envisioned a life, and maybe they envisioned you as part of it, maybe not. It certainly wasn't you as you are now, or as you were as a child, but like, it had nothing to do with you. You're already here.
Your life has nothing to do with you. That's funny, huh?
Yeah. You're already here. Now what's after that has to do with you.
Yeah. Exactly. And that can be tough. I mean, I think it took me, I'm still, you never really stop working through those things, but I was thinking the other day, I was like, geez, it took me 20 years just to resolve the simplest of things in my mind. And probably because I wanted to. I liked thinking about it, whatever those things were, betrayal, or, you just mull them over. But it took me that long to go, okay, I'm done chewing on that. I don't even know if I got any nutrition from it. I must have learned something, hopefully. But at the same time, I go, God, what does it mean to just chew on an idea for 10 years or 20 years?
Do you think you could go back to those ideas if you wanted to?
Well, I think I learned something about how to turn pain into beauty, and why you would want to do that, or to zoom out and see the beauty that was there the whole time, or that, you know what I mean? Maybe that's what I got out of it. But yeah, I think that in the end I did get something from it. It's hard to pinpoint. But it is funny when you think of like 10 years or 20 years of just thinking about something small like being bitter. I ended up reading in Judaism about the idea of the evil eye, and I said, oh my God, that's me. I look at everything and I just destroy it with what I'm thinking about it. And then when I started to try to check that instinct, things got better. But it was just interesting that we brought up bitterness somehow.
Well, what did you say? You said like bitterness specifically. Resentment is almost the same thing to me. It's like the same idea. And you talked about turning pain into beauty. I think that's what I was hearing. I think for me, a lot of it just comes down to acceptance. And if I'm going to be here and make something of my experience, doesn't mean happiness necessarily. It's not like, if I'm going to be here and make something of that, I have to accept that everything that's happened to me or that's part of me, like, it's part of accepting who you are. Like, that's there. It was painful. But if there's something worthwhile to being here, I have to accept that it's still there. Like, the pain doesn't go away.
Right.
You just accept that it's there, but that there's other things too.
Right.
I think sometimes we focus too much on the pain. That's the bitterness, right?
Well, you know what I think it might
bitter.
have been? That I had such a bland life. It seemed that my early life was, I don't know, I couldn't sink my teeth into anything. It seemed to just be kind of just happening. And then I think when I became a young man and I had some painful experiences, they were so rich that I thought, well, this is interesting. And then maybe that's what it was all about, was just mining those experiences because they were so powerful. And I thought, well, at least this is something, instead of just Monday through Friday and then the weekend you mow the lawn, and like, it was pretty.
You've done a little bit of yoga practice, right? Have you studied the yamas and the niyamas? I'm not going to remember them right, so I'm not going to go into them in detail. But they're basically like things you're attracted to and things that repulse you. And usually the repulsive things are painful and the attractive things are pleasurable, usually. And so I think sometimes you have some painful experiences, and it's just as easy to get attached to those as to the good ones, and being overly attached to any of them in Buddhist or Hindu philosophy. Let's not say it's for everybody, but it can be just as bad to be attached to either of them. And it's easy to do because they're powerful experiences, like you said. Have this really powerful experience, and they have a great capacity to teach us things too. But if you're just holding on to it and identifying with like, oh, this is painful, that's a big part of who I am, and I feel giant because of it, I'm just filled up with all this pain. If that's what you're seeing through the entire world through, all the world will look painful and ugly to you.
Totally. Yeah. And I lived there.
Yeah.
And I hid it really well. So it was hard for other people to tell, so no one could really help me. I was like, no, this is mine. Finally I said, this is just not working anymore.
That's really funny because I remember maybe the first couple times I met you, again, first time with Dustin, most of the time before we had our friendship outside of that, outside of the third friend that we have together, I was like, I really like that Randall guy. He seems like he has a good attitude. Dustin's like, no, he just hides it well.
Dustin said that?
Yeah, this is a long time ago, though.
Oh,
again,
that's great.
This is all pre-certain sparks.
Yeah, no, I kind of looked at it like, well, it's not anyone else's problem, you know? But sometimes what happens with that sort of way of thinking is then eventually you can't hold it and then you explode on something or someone.
Or you don't explode, or it undermines you. It subtly poisons and sabotages
That was
things,
the big,
like relationships.
That was the other, exactly, yeah. Because I wasn't really present because it was just too...
That's right.
You know, too difficult. But
I have this exact same experience, and it's gotten to the point where I'm still not the most open person. I'm really reserved until I know somebody.
Uh-huh.
But when somebody's on the inside with me, like I always just tell them, like, "How are you feeling?" Man, this has been a bad year. I was suicidal most of this year.
Yeah.
And if you just say it out loud,
yeah.
without being dramatic about it and making it be the center of attention and it being all about you, it's like it's just so less exhausting to hide than hiding it all the time.
Definitely.
It's just easier to be present and be who you really are.
I heard something interesting about this idea that, you know, some people, they sort of believe their own presentation of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I got into this idea of physically you can present yourself as something, but it doesn't have any depth. Yeah,
Posture.
It doesn't have any depth. so that, and then I saw that in myself. The idea was you make yourself appear big from this perspective because you're looking at me. So I'm going to be a big, strong person. But that those people are very thin like paper. You know, that's how they actually stand.
That's a nice metaphor.
And then I said, oh my God, that's me, you know? Yeah, wherever I'm being, that's what I want to present strong because, you know, you don't want to be unnecessarily fragile. But then you realize, well, if I am fragile, what's the point of not being that way or letting it be known?
Yeah, and there's all other kinds of ways of being and relating to that. Like there are people that hide themselves, you know, rather than being big. And they might be giant. They might have so much to offer. A lot of them are artists. Like you run into a shy performer or, you know, somebody who just doesn't do anything with their art, doesn't, you know, and not that you have to do anything with it.
Right, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That was sort of recently for me going, wait a second. I can feel now that my energy wasn't being used effectively. I'm going to see where it can go now, you know, before it's too late. I just had this vision of like being on my, you know, so many people say on your deathbed, that's like the worst thing is any sort of regret about your life. And I said, I can tell that's the category that I would fall in. Like, what was I thinking? What was I doing? So he's been trying to work on it a little bit. And that's, like I may have mentioned, part of this doing these talks is like, okay, well, what if I talk to somebody and I have nothing to say? Or what if it doesn't go anywhere? Okay.
Yeah. Who cares?
It's okay. What if nobody watches it? Okay.
You're not that important to begin with.
It's just fine.
Yeah. That's so much of this that you said, like energy, like so inefficient. So much of like, and we are not so smart. Like we are in the course of a natural human progression through a life. Like I'm arriving at middle age for sure. And the one thing I realized is like, oh, I had so much energy when I was 18 and I wasted almost all of it. I used like 10% of that.
I talked to David Berman on email right before he died, the great musician, and he said the same thing. He said, I didn't realize what I had when I had, you know, essentially energy and, you know, unlimited creativity or something. And now in his 50s, he was saying, somehow I thought that I would now be able to do the things that I hadn't done, and now I realize I can't. And that's what's so much more painful.
But one of the things you do get as you get to be around middle age is what little energy you have, you know how to manage it better. That's what I find anyway. It's like, oh, it doesn't feel good to do that or to pretend to be that, so I don't lose any energy out in those directions anymore.
Yeah.
Those in other places, but I get to decide now.
Yeah.
Like, if I need energy to do a drawing or like just lie in the sun, like you make the time for it. You use it. You
Totally.
Find a way to manage it.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about before we started recording, was the idea of scheduling things, which for me was just so gross. Like, There's no schedule. There is a schedule in the natural world. Of course, there's day and there's night and whatever. But I always thought like, oh, if I have to have a date book with what finish the lyrics for this song, I thought, oh God, I don't want to even do this. And now I realize that was just one of those weird things I had an aversion to, and then the reality is you have to make time for things. And what happened by not having a schedule was one of the things I lost was what I valued most, which was free time to space out and be whatever that part of myself that I wanted to be. Yeah. I lost all of that.
I was just going to say, you told me that you now are doing that, and like if you don't make the time for that as an adult with responsibilities, you won't do it.
Exactly. And then I go, I get it now. I get why people carry around those books. I have a friend, Chris, who's like the most organized person to me in the world. He's just got that. And then I realized he probably doesn't want to schedule things either, but he wants to get a lot done, and he gets a lot done.
And gets to decide what he does with his time. Like, you have a business. If you don't decide what you're going to do in your time in that business, the business will decide for you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be answering emails and taking phone calls, and suddenly everybody will just eat up every second of your day.
Mm-hmm. I finally got to a point where I go, we have enough business, but I don't have enough sanity. So I'm going to maybe lose some business and regain some sanity. And it's been really fun. I mean, sometimes people will call and be like, you didn't answer the phone. And I'm like, you didn't leave a message. Pretty simple, really.
Yeah.
Or, that slipped through the cracks. Well, I had to weigh it out. Try not to leave people hanging. But that's one of the things I agree with you that's kind of coming around at this time. And I feel fortunate to have not had to make any major decisions that I feel like shape my life in a way that it really can't live with, or that I'm really uncomfortable with. I stayed pretty true to like, there's some things I don't want to do.
And that is fortune. There's a lot of fortune involved in the ability to do that. To do any of this stuff we're talking about, like make decisions about what you do with your time.
Yeah.
There's a ton of fortune involved in that.
Yeah. And I've always, been educated enough to know that it's a big struggle for a lot of people. But I couldn't, somehow my own struggle outweighed the reality of I knew that, I was doing fine. I wasn't starving, and I wasn't, or however you define that. Somehow I thought my pain is as great as anybody. It's the worst pain in the world. And now I think, what pain? If there was a pain, it was me. I was the irritant to other people. I've had so many friends that I grew up with where now I look back and go, oh, that's why they didn't want to hang out with me. Like I have Mike, I play music with, and I understand Mike now more than I ever have before, and the greatest gift I can give to Mike is to leave him alone. I can suddenly see that. That's what he wants. And if I really care about him, then I shouldn't bother him.
Yeah, just check in once in a while.
Yeah, and we still love
dude?
each other.
What's up, dude? Yeah. And if he wants to hang out, he'll let you know.
But it took me so long to realize that, I'm like, why doesn't he want to do every goddamn mission that I send us on? It's like, because he wants to be by himself. That's a type of person. Oh. I was talking to some friends last night about that. We were talking about love languages,
Yeah.
Another guy, middle-aged, and he's like, I didn't know what that was. And now I realize that I really wish I had. We were talking about, you give somebody what you think is a gift, and to them, that's the thing they want the least.
Or a burden, even.
Yeah. Just interesting.
Yeah.
Seems like they should teach that in school.
Yeah, so much of this stuff borders on like self-help stuff, which I'm very uncomfortable with. But if you just like destigmatize and say these are conceptual apparatuses for understanding things that are in the world, like social relations, our own psychology, it's like you can chill out about it a little bit. But like the whole phrase self-help makes me cringe.
And also just thinking, that was the funny thing about myself, was I simultaneously thought I was worthless and the most important thing in the universe.
Those things go hand in hand, and I know exactly the feeling. It's still inside me. I could go back. I could retreat further into that than I have been in the past.
Yeah.
I hope to continue to move away from it, but it's still there.
Yeah.
The option is always there, right? I mean, I don't know if you can still feel it. Maybe you're doing better.
Yeah. And also like realizing the difference between what does it mean to really care for yourself?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean sitting there and letting yourself mope. I mean, it could.
It might just being like...
But not for 20 years.
Yeah. It might just mean like, hey, your blood sugar's low, make lunch.
my buddy Eric, my yoga teacher, actually, he told me I said, Eric, he's been married for I don't know how long, and I think they have a great relationship, it seems like it's a healthy relationship. And I said, what's the secret to a lasting relationship? He said, gotta stay hydrated.
Yeah.
So if someone's grumpy, they need a glass of water. And I was like, that's so funny. And then when you feel it in yourself, you're like, I need a glass of water.
Oh, how many girlfriends did it take that had Cliff Bars in their purse for me before I started keeping one in my glove box for myself?
You saw the Cliff Bars in the house?
No, I've got one in my glove box right now, though.
That's how I survived.
I had a 2-year-old one, and I had to eat it the other day because I was in a food desert. I drove out to Simi Valley, and it was like half an hour to the nearest thing, and I was in the middle of doing some business, and I was like, I guess I got to eat the Cliff Bar. It's 2 years old. And the bright side is you get to put a fresh one in there now.
Yep. I love those soft, when they get a little bit warm. What's your favorite
Peanut
flavor?
butter.
Peanut butter, yeah. When the peanut butter ones are just a little bit warm and soft. Oh, I love a Cliff Bar with a banana, and that's like fancy dining.
Yeah, it's breakfast. It used to be breakfast all the time.
So, regards to the bookshop, you said that you've been busy.
Very busy.
And I had a question, which was, what are the most common, frequently asked questions that you answer about Bart's books?
Well, Bart's is pretty unique, that. So, like, the most frequent one is, what do you do when it rains? Because it's outside. We get that all the time. We used to put it on a t-shirt. I have to be cautious here, because the danger when I talk about the bookstore, because I get asked to talk about it much, as I'll fall into what my yoga teacher called yoga teacher voice, when you've like done the same instruction and you start to become non-present in it. So when I talk about the bookshop, I can go on autopilot. So, but yes, that's the most asked question. What do you do when it rains? And I mostly try not to answer it anymore, because it's hard for me. I either sound completely detached or like snarky.
We used to have this wall in the studio, and it was a like some sort of laminate that you put up that looked like brick. So it was probably cinder block underneath this wall, and then there was this fake brick, which I didn't put up.
No.
And without fail, every band I ever recorded, like day 2 or 3 of recording, they would say, "That's not real brick." They would tell me. And I'd just be like, the mind boggles, man. I mean, where people's minds go is the strangest thing. It's not real brick. And I'd be like, yes, you are correct.
So things like that make me really curious, though. Why is it 2 to 3 days? There must be something about the human perceptual apparatus. Like, so before you were in that building, how long did it take you to realize? Did you realize as soon as you rented it?
I'm not sure that I ever thought about it till they pointed it out, I just thought, well, the wall is just the wall. It's not why we're here necessarily.
Yeah. But there must be something about we think about spaces or experience them that puts it on that time frame.
Have you heard the thing about you, when you go from a one room to another room, the reason you forget what you went in there for is that your brain wipes when you go into a new space?
I've heard different versions of that thing. I've heard that we experience spaces as in different ways. Like clearly, like, this is a new space, I'm a new person. That's one of the reasons they tell you when you lose the things to walk back through. It's like maybe you'll go into the mode you were in, or maybe it'll simulate a memory.
Yeah. But that's fine. I understand being on autopilot with something that you've done for as long as you have. So I won't stay on Bart's too long.
Yeah. Well, I like it. I love books. I like talking about it.
Yeah. I won't even go on that anymore. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to talk about?
No. Oh, you know what? You were thinking about running for mayor. When was this that you were thinking about?
I really was. So leading up to, before I moved out here, there was like a grassroots campaign to elect me for mayor. And everyone, like a really diverse group of people, were like, you'd be the person, because you're not afraid to take people to task when it's appropriate. And, the arts and music thing is obviously a valuable thing to our community. So I was really thinking about it, and I knew that the last election was the best time to do it.
That makes sense.
And then I moved out here, outside of city limits, and it precluded me from running.
So is that the main thing that made your decision for you?
Yes, but there was an underlying thing, which I had a feeling that I wasn't quite fully sane yet. And that might be a lot of responsibility for a slightly crazy person.
So that was what, 2 years ago?
Yeah. And now I think I could balance it, but
So the reason I asked that is because this year, a customer from the bookstore, called me on the phone, just cold called, and asked for the manager. Called me and they're like, "Hey, you have 15 minutes? I want to talk to you about running for mayor."
to you.
Yeah. And I kind of laughed, and I'm just like, first of all, there's a lot of stuff in my past you don't know about that will certainly come to light if I run for mayor. Like, I have not always been on the correct side of the law.
Yeah.
But also, I work 50 hours a week running a successful business. I have another business that's unsuccessful but a lot more fun that I also work at 10 to 15 hours a week, my art gallery. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want to give up another 5 to 10 hours every week and then another 10 on top of that whenever there's an issue at hand. I don't think I have that time in my life. If I give that up, I don't think I will be a sane person.
Yeah. See, same.
Yeah. So the person who called me actually called one of my yoga teachers and got her to run instead, and she won.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah.
And has anything changed?
No.
This is what I love.
You can't do anything. There's no power in that office.
Yeah, except for as a, there is a lot of value in how you make something appear,
Mm-hmm. And you could shape the discussion, maybe get other things to turn.
Yeah, or say, these are the things that I believe, what are they called? Ohioans?
Yeah, I guess.
Or, should be focused on. And you can sort of shape that. And also take people to task once in a while. As the mayor, I really feel like we've got an issue of departments not communicating. And we've got an issue of the citizens feeling like the community isn't really represented in somehow. And so we need to at least pretend to address that. That's valuable.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you say to somebody like, I hear you, like maybe you don't really know what they're talking about or how to fix it, but they might just need to be heard. That can go a long way.
What's the population of Lompoc?
It's about 50,000.
That's more than I thought. I thought it was like 35 or 40. Yeah. That's a lot of people.
And then we've got Lompoc, Vandenberg Village, the base, Mission Hills. So we've got, like anybody has unincorporated areas.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people.
Yeah, that would be a much bigger responsibility than being the mayor of Ohio. We've got like 8,000 people.
Really?
And from what I understand, that sign is out of date, and the population is actually lower now.
Wow.
Almost 1,000 people.
So what about Ojai being, I hear a lot. Well, let's talk about this for a second. I have Ojai people that I know, and I don't even know how I know them, but I feel so close to them. Like the Ojai guys.
Yeah.
And the Bart's guys.
Yeah. It's a small town. It's a very small community. But even something like 50,000 people can feel small. I know that because I know how Ventura is.
And there's two streets, two main streets.
Yep.
And we have the population to support things. But I think Lompoc has a culture of, not really knowing how to really support local. We have a small amount of people who support everything. You'll see them at all the events, the wineries, they're the ones just making it happen. And then you have all the other people they seem to not know that they live in a place that has, needs.
I mean, and a lot of those are social. If something were going to change, it would require people building cultural and social institutions.
Yes.
And without those things, a place will essentially just do what the market wants to do.
Yes, and that's right. That's right where we are. Yeah. Lompoc is getting pulled around. It's funny to me. I never thought about myself as being like the Lompoc guy or anything like that. It was just where I was. I remember somebody asking me one time after a show, like, "That was really excellent," and then he's like, "Why do you live in Lompoc?" And the guy, I don't even know who this person was. It was weird. And he said, "Do you like being the big fish in a small pond?"
Oh, he was projecting a lot onto you.
Yeah, and I was super stoned, and I was just like, what? It was like so intense. I was like, what? And I said, to be honest, I just don't think about spaces that way. You got to be somewhere. where you're going to be, you have to try to make the most of it. I can't see myself having the financial means to be somewhere else. From here, through the internet, I could reach anywhere if I really wanted to. Within a drive to all these great places, I like it, but I don't think of myself as being like, but if you're going to be somewhere for that long, you might as well get involved a little bit.
Yeah. Well, if you want to have any say in what becomes of a place or a culture.
Yeah. Have you seen Dustin?
Yeah, I see him more frequently lately.
I was over there, and I saw you that same time. I think it was the same day.
Yeah, up on the hill at night,
yeah,
just having a conversation. Great. It's one of the best things to do.
So nice. That was such a nice night.
Be outside and have a good talk with friends.
Is there any talk of having anything at the bookshop as far as events? And are you getting near to that? Because I'm seeing people having music at their...
Yeah, we're in code orange now. Whatever. I hate these color codes.
Yes, I haven't been following it.
I think this county is still in purple, but we're in orange, whatever that means.
Which is good or bad? Better than purple?
Better. It's like purple, red, orange, yellow. I don't know if there's anything worse than purple. Maybe blue.
You want to get your red card pulled. That's all I know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, also, there's other things going on. Like, we're so busy. I'm tired. I have trouble imagining putting energy into doing stuff there outside of...
Just throwing it out because it's the way I've interacted with the shop has been to either perform there or sing.
I'm always happy to have you come and perform there.
That'd be nice.
I look forward to that. I remember the last time you came and played. I think it was the last time where you got a little wild. You got up on the table and everybody was very much enjoyed it.
That's good.
Yeah.
I really love playing at places like that. I don't really like music venues and clubs and stuff.
I heard that in the last conversation that you had with that guy. You were talking about venues around here, and I'm just like, yeah, I could see that.
It's a hard life.
It's not. Yeah, it's just so many things that decide what kind of music you hear. And like, if you're playing at a bar, you get bar expectations. And if you're playing at a coffee house, you get coffee house expectations. There's going to be a girl with an acoustic guitar and dreadlocks.
I think I finally understand why my friend never really was into performing.
Yeah.
I was always like, what do you mean? You got to get out there and play. If you're not playing, it's not real. And I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But some people love that.
And it all just comes like down to a relationship, right? Like, what is the relationship to the people to this space, and what are their expectations because of the type of space it is, and then so much of it is just expectations.
Have you been to any concerts since before COVID that you enjoyed?
Oh man,
do you go to shows?
Not as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty typical. It's like you get more tired, and you're like, yeah, you don't get as excited about stuff. I think the last time I've been to some shows since then. But the last time I got really excited at a show was I went to see Kurt Weill. It's got to be like 7 years ago now. And I'm like, I like him okay. And I just kind of wanted to do something because it was fun. And my friend was really into him. I'm like, let's go see Kurt Weill.
Where was it?
In LA.
Cool.
Yeah. I think the Echo. Maybe the Echoplex. But the guy who opened for him blew me away. And I was like, whoa, this is what I saw that. I'm like, that was awesome. And then Kurt Weill came out. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like,
who was the opener?
Steve Gunn.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I really like his music.
And he did an acoustic set? Or,
yeah.
Finger picking stuff.
Yeah, I really liked that. And he actually did a couple of songs with vocals too. And I was like, this is really wonderful. And like, that's the magic of going to a show.
Exactly. And that's why I loved when I was going to shows. When I first started going to shows, I would see Sonic Youth all the time. And the opening acts were just, having your mind blown you can do that? Like, that's a thing? And the way Sonic Youth was like, well, we make a living, and so we are going to provide opportunities to all these people that would never get to do these tours. That was really cool. Yeah. And then I thought that's how it was always going to be, and then you're like, oh, it's not at all the norm.
No. But that serendipity of going to see something that you like, and then seeing something else and like, oh my God, there's just something. Serendipity is the word, but there's something miraculous and joyful about being surprised, right? Like when you go to a record shop and you find something that was kind of cool, or if like somebody turns you on to something that's a little bit better, like if a friend loans you something that blows your mind, that's a little bit better. Digging around on the internet is boring. It's like one of the worst ways to discover music. But going to see live music and seeing something that you've never heard before live for the first time is just like, oh wow. There's just, again, joyful would be the word I would use. Surprising and joyful.
You know the Boredoms?
Yeah.
I remember going to that festival when the Sonic Youth played this festival. It was called This Ain't No Picnic, and that's the tour. They had all their equipment stolen. So when they finally came on, they're like, our entire truck, everything we've collected for 25 years was stolen last night. So we've borrowed gear. We're going to try to do a show. But the Boredoms played earlier in the day. And you know when like a song ends and they do that thing where like they just hit the cymbals and it's like, done, the song ends?
Yeah.
They did,
for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, for 30 minutes. And I was like, no songs ever came in. It was just that. And I said, that is seeing that on a big stage.
This was later Boredoms in their droney face.
It was so great.
Yeah.
I didn't really know much of their
I've never
music,
seen them. I wish I had.
That was just so fun. You know who I saw that was really great? I like this band called Ice Age. And do you know Toms of Finland?
I know both of those things.
So I went and they did a presentation. Toms of Finland did a thing where
at the center in Hollywood.
This was at some little. It was like a warm up set of gigs. They did a weekend of gigs. I went to see them 3 or 4 nights in a row. That's how I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But they brought out Toms of Finland, Image. This is in like a small group in a bar, right? Yeah. And they just door opens, out comes somebody carrying this image.
Real strong,
they don't speak.
Sexy BDSM man.
They show everybody this image, and then out come these big bodybuilder, look like they were probably porn star guys, to reenact the image.
Yeah.
They would reenact the image, and that one would be done. Out would come another image. They'd show the crowd, and out come with the people. And I said, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I had no idea what Toms of Finland was. I was like, this is truly...
And that was the whole performance? They didn't play any songs or anything?
That was the opening.
Oh, yeah,
And then, of course, Ice Age played the regular set.
That's pretty great.
Oh, that kind of stuff is like that surprise. Like, I had no idea. And I generally don't look at what the show's going to be or even what time it starts. You just kind of go over when you think it should be about right. But that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, even bad surprises can be good. Like, we have so much expectation, and so much of what we experience is just based on what we expect. It's almost worse for me to like go see a group or performer that I'm in love with that I've never seen before, because it's never going to be, you know, the thing you've listened to for 30 years on a record or whatever. Like, it's not going to be that, although sometimes it's close. Like, seeing the Stooges was sick. Yeah, but usually it's just being surprised is just wonderful, even if it's a bad thing. Just anything that knocks you out of what you expect of the world, because it's just wrong to be expecting much anyway.
Pretty much. I was thinking about that, about the idea of, you know, like I talk a lot about this idea of beauty, you know, like looking for more beauty in the world. But I don't literally mean like traditional beauty. I mean, you know, I want it to be shaken up a little bit, or, you know.
I was thinking about that as I drove up here. Because, you know, driving up the 1, I don't get to drive up the 1 very much. I usually just go up the 101. But I was looking around, I'm like, get to Gaviota, I'm like, holy shit. Like,
and it's getting green and good.
And that's exactly what I was thinking about. I'm like, oh, well, this is like extra gorgeous because it's spring. And I'm like, but like, it's always beautiful. Like, when it's dry and desolate into summer, it's still beautiful. It's just easier to see it right now for lots of good reasons and bad reasons, both. But I just got to remember to attune, you know, like whatever that mental faculty is, that little bit, like tune that into what's there that's beautiful, because that way I can see it when I come up here in the summertime.
Well, it's funny because we've been threatening to hang out for how many years?
I don't know.
Finally got
it's been an open invitation.
I'm going to check the camera.
Yeah, do it. Sure. No, but
perfect timing, I think.
But that's exactly the same process, because you know that it's beautiful in the summer, and you know it's extra beautiful right now. But what does extra mean? It's horseshit.
Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday about, like, I said, you know, it's funny, whenever I go to a city, and it doesn't matter what city it is, I always try to find like the donut shop and the Mexican market, and they're like, and my friend said something like, oh, you like somebody said, oh, maybe because you live in Lompoc, it's comfortable to you. And I was like, oh, that's the nicest thing to say. But I knew what she meant. But it isn't because I think that they're funky. I mean, I know that they're funky to other people, but to me, that's where the magic's at, you know?
Yeah.
Donut shops. I love donut shops.
I went to a donut shop I'd never been to before in Thousand Oaks last week, and there was something magical about it. I was driving back from Los Angeles early in the morning, and I'd been eating more donuts than I should lately, which, like, for me, more donuts than I should is like 2 a month. That's probably too many. Maybe 1 a month is about the right number of donuts. But
I used to have, my shop used to be across the street from the donut shop, and I literally had donuts every day. And let me tell you, I felt like a donut. It was not good.
I could have done that at 20. I don't think I could do that now. Which makes me want to go to sleep. Yeah.
What you were saying?
Oh, the donut shop's open early in the morning, but it's like, so like I'm like, I gotta wait an hour before I go to this person's house and buy some books because they're not ready for me yet. I got here earlier than I expected, so I'm like, gotta find a parking lot to like pull over and take a nap in. And I got there, I'm like, oh, there's a donut shop. How do I know there's a donut shop? Like, I see lots of dudes with big trucks walking by with coffee, wearing like painter's whites, or like they've got gardening equipment in the thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I like, so I follow one of the guys the opposite direction the guy came from. You know, I had a big coffee. I'm like, there it is. That's the donut shop, and they're the same everywhere. Like, I'm sure there's exceptions, but it's like always a Korean family. Like, because that's.
I love the old pictures that are on the wall that are so faded of the products they might not even carry.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they're all the same, but they're all slightly different. Like, this one sold lottery tickets. I've never been to a donut shop that sold lottery tickets before. Like, I was like, okay. But, you know, I get my same donut, like at the old-fashioned bar with a glaze, and it's like, tastes the same. Everybody's using the same recipe. Like, and
the only difference is they call it a cooler at some places and a cruller at others.
Oh, and I have a specific fondness. My favorite part of the donut shop is the coffee in the styrofoam cup. This is why I like gas station coffee too.
Oh, totally.
Just like slightly watery coffee in the styrofoam cup, because there's just all the pretension scraped away. Like I worked in a coffee shop when I went to college for many years, and like I never got super snobby about it. Like I make my coffee at home, I'm snobby about it, make a good regular cup of coffee, nothing more than that. But like I still appreciate that. It's like, this is just serviceable, and it's not trying to do anything more. And there's beauty in enjoying that if you look for it. You can get snooty. You can be like, this is not my Starbucks or whatever your place is. And there's something to that, but it doesn't mean that this thing isn't beautiful too.
Well, you were talking about the idea of it being the same. Yeah. It's funny because what we like about the donut shops is that they are the same in that they are kind of unfinished. But yeah, that ties into what I was thinking about just this some other sort of beauty in the world, you know. I remember taking a picture of the lady at the donut shop and her kids, and then I might still have the photo, and thinking like, man, where are these kids now? They're probably in their, God, they might be in their mid-20s.
Yeah, they might be college graduates.
And I think about taking the picture down there, and then I think, maybe I won't. You know, I've been carrying around a picture of you and your kids for 20 years.
But also you have that picture already.
Totally.
Yeah. Unless you really, really want that reminder, but it is the unfinished quality of the donut shop. There's like, it does what it needs to do and not anything else.
That's the way I think of our store. You know? Yeah, I get it. There's trendy colors. We could paint the walls this way. We could just do the thing that we say we do, and this is just how it looks in here.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I only think of it, sometimes we'll do a tour, you know, like a business group will come through to do like women in business teams that they come through and tour local businesses. And only then I'm like, oh God, what does this place look like from that perspective, you know?
Do you ever ask them?
No.
If you can, you should.
I should, huh?
You should like, if one of them's nice and you have a little conversation, be like, hey, can I ask you something?
Does this feel like a donut shop?
Well, how does this place feel to you? Like,
well,
what do you see?
Fortunately, we get enough feedback in a day where people are like, I just love being in here. So I'm like, that's got to be something, even though it's non-traditional. Yeah. You know, I hope they're saying that to the donut shops.
It's more important for your customers to see that than a random person on a business tour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I've always looked at it. Like, well, these are our users, and for them, it's exactly what they need. And if you aren't a user, what does it really matter? That's sort of how it is with life too. It's like, you either use me or you don't. Yeah. You know,
take it.
This is what it looks like here.
This is how it is.
This is how it is around here.
I'm not going to put a lot of effort into doing sit-ups. I'm not doing that anymore.
Are you still doing yoga?
Not as much as I used to.
Yeah. Were you heavy?
Yeah, real consistent for a couple years, and then it became painful. Not physically, but like it got to this emotionally dangerous territory that I felt it was healthier to take it slower in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The the practice was bringing something out of you which was painful, or the going to the practice was difficult?
I'll tell a little story that just describes it, because
I don't want to pry.
No. I just worry that it'll be a boring story, but you'll like it, I think. Just trying to find the starting place because it's a little bit meta and circular with itself. My yoga teacher, who taught the teacher trainings that I took, she taught one of the trainings was called Watch Your Mouth, and something they emphasized in that, and we can practice it right now when we do this, is like, pay attention to what you're saying. And I often find when I do that when I'm saying stuff to other people, I'm really trying to say something to myself. Like what I'm saying, when I'm projecting out there, it's for me more than anybody else. But another thing she said, she was always cautioning, like, the purpose of a yoga practice is to expand our capacities. When we expand our capacities to feel, you'll feel more. And she's like, and this is a warning. She always said this before I started doing teacher. This is a warning. Like, it doesn't sound so bad until you begin to feel things that you didn't know you were feeling. And that's when it gets dangerous. So I was telling my friend that story. I was out with a friend, and she's like, so yeah, my teacher used to always warn me that when you practice yoga, you expand your capacity to feel more. And my friend said to me, oh, I don't think I'd want that. A friend who never practiced yoga. I'm like, oh. A couple months after that, in the midst of my yoga practice, I began to feel some things very intensely that I was very uncomfortable with. And it all kind of came into focus, and I was like, oh, how did my teacher know this? And how did my friend that had never taken a yoga class know what that meant? But I didn't know what it meant. And so I still go there sometimes, but I'm just more cautious of myself, because I don't know if I'll hurt myself. I don't know what's going to, but I'm not like dramatic teenager, I'll hurt myself, but I don't know if it's going to hurt me, but I don't want to take on more than I can handle at a time. So
Interesting.
I'm attenuating my engagement with that practice until the intensity backs off a little
Interesting.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I had an experience after a class where, you wind down, you're sitting, in the dark, and you think class is over, and just the floodgates opened, and I just wept. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, the two people left in the class were my teacher and his wife, who I felt extremely comfortable around, which is why I took the class to begin with. Mm-hmm. And I remember her saying, like, what is it? And I was just like, it's just everything. Like, there's just so many things that I've not let out. And that was the start of some good healing.
Yep. Yeah.
And also I hadn't really thought about my physical being. I lived in my mind. I thought my body was just to carry my brain around. Yeah. Then I got into this guy on YouTube. He's really great. And he introduced this idea of your body as, your life as like thinking of a marriage between a horse and a rider. Yeah. And your body is your horse, and your ego is your rider, and they serve each other, and they have to be in a good relationship. And you think about all the things you make your horse do that it doesn't want to do, and you think about
well, what kind of food you feed it.
The whole thing. How you adorn your horse. Does your horse feel special? Do you treat your horse with respect? Or do you, wow, that was enough to chew on for a long time. I'm still chewing on it. Yeah. But that was a big one. But so I understand.
Yeah. Yoga's powerful stuff.
Really is.
You can have too little or too much.
I like the idea that your breath is a portal to, that it is your breathing that is the connection point between this and whatever else is going on. And that's how they interface. Yeah. It's interesting. And also how funny it is that just like anything, yoga becomes like a buzzword and you just think, oh, yoga, or yoga, whatever, and then you go, oh my God, it's actually this thing that's cliche for a reason.
It's the easy response to have, and it's related to things that are outside of ourselves too. Like when you take a millennia's old practice that's designed for lots of different things, but partially for like emotional, physical, maybe spiritual healing if you want to get way out in California cuckoo land. However you want to think about it, it's fine. It's whatever works for you. But if you take that, and the only way our culture has to get it to people is by charging them money, and you understand that like the teacher needs support. There has to be support there for the teachings to be passed on, just like with music. There needs to be support so the teacher can exist, so it can give his time to teach music. It's just the way it has to be. But in our culture, things are a little bit out of balance. And then there's companies that come and put the word yoga on things and sell them for marked up prices and have them manufactured by labor that's treated poorly overseas or in the United States. And you can realize like it's easy to get dismissive of the term because it can be sapped of its meaning if you're not careful.
Like anything.
Like anything. Yeah.
Food itself could be distorted.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Like when you're in the food desert and you go to the gas station, you're like, oh, these are my options: Snickers bar, and that's it.
It does satisfy.
If my option is a low blood sugar fit where I hate everything in the world, or eating a Snickers bar, I'll eat the Snickers bar these days.
Yeah, I've been doing this thing lately where, like, if I have a really strong wave of emotions, like on Friday, nothing happened, but it was just enough to send me a little off balance, and then I got home and I felt tired and I took a nap. But what I've been doing is saying out loud, strong feelings, Oh, these are strong feelings. Instead of being like, I feel this way, I'm like, strong feelings.
Yeah.
It's just. Yeah. And fortunately, I'm like, okay, well, my big thing was always thinking like, well, what's the point? All this advancement, and yet we know people are left behind. And great, I feel better about myself. It doesn't change anything about all the turmoil and pain and injustice. And then I was like, but I can't do good work if I feel that way about the world, so I have to put it to rest a little bit. I remember an old girlfriend when Black Lives Matter was coming about. I don't know what I said about it, but she said something like, yes, I know what you mean, and I used to see things the way you told me to see them, but now I think this other way. And I was like, that's great. But it was interesting to think of like, well, what was I saying? What was I trying to get her to think? What did she think I was? I think she was just saying, you think that it's so always doom and gloom and that you have, what's the point? Which is kind of what I was just saying. You know what I mean? Even though I didn't really say it.
Yeah, well, that gets to like, I guess it gets back to taking some responsibility for making there be a point. Like, you're going to die. You just throw up your hands?
Yeah.
You're here already. You didn't choose it. What are you going to do?
Sometimes, it's funny too. One time I was at an acupuncturist and I remember I said, he was kind of like, well, what are you here for? And one of the things that came to mind, it was really interesting too, being in that, is talk about spaces. Something about the guy's office or him or something. I just felt like I'm just going to tell this guy what I really think, and it was very interesting. But one of the things I remember saying was like, I feel like I'm always asking why, and I feel guilty about it because I know that that's not a question that can be answered. And I see other people doing what they're supposed to without asking why, and I wish I could do that, but I can't. It's like, well, I see people carrying a bunch of stuff, and I could get in there and start carrying it with them, or I'm like, where are we going with this stuff? I need to know, because it'll affect how much energy I have for this project. You know what I mean?
But that's necessary too. That is your part.
Thank you.
Somebody's got to say that stuff. Somebody's got to ask these questions, because otherwise we just all march off the cliff.
Yeah, thank you. I think that might be true.
Like, sometimes I think of like all the people in the world. And this is also, I don't actually think this is the way it actually is, but it's a metaphor that works for me. You have your mind, and sometimes you're really emotional this way, and sometimes you can't get any work done, and sometimes you're just killing it. and you're having, your relationships are going well, and you're getting all, and like you're all over the place, and you're never fixed. And this is part of this is just things are swinging. When you find balance, it doesn't stay there because the ground shifts beneath your feet. And I think all the people in the world are kind of like that collectively too. So if we could find some balance, maybe those of us over here who are doing a little better can finally help the people that aren't doing as well. I'm not sure we're doing that. I don't think we are or we aren't. I don't know enough, and I think it's way too complex for somebody to know. But
that's one of the things that really upsets me, is that it appears to me that those whose voices are allowed to be heard have always had their voice heard. And so it seems to me what we see now is like this grasp for who's going to be heard. And I don't know if I know what I'm trying to say with that, but I just, the donut shop, there's so much happening in that donut shop. The people that come, the painters in their whites, those stories are more rich than any of the things in movies. And I always just felt like I just want to hear those things, instead of, there's a line in a song I heard that says, "We've been raised on replicas of fake and winding roads." And it seems like so much of our culture is a replica of an actual experience. And that in serving those replicas, the real thing is being starved out in some way. And I experience it all the time in kids that don't have anybody to listen to them, and their lives are incredibly rich, and what they experience in a day is more than anybody should be expected to handle. And I think, but no one's even hearing this voice.
I love Maurice Sendak. I recently read a wonderful book about him that was mostly done in the forms of interviews the author did with his therapist. But he said, when questioned about like why are your books like creepy and scary, like if they're for children, he's like, well, first of all, I don't make children's books, I make picture books. But if you think that children can't handle or engage with stuff, you have repressed your own childhood, because children's emotional lives are filled with terror all the time. Like not just terror, but everything else that we feel, but they're incredibly deep and rich emotional lives. They can handle those things depicted abstractly in pictures in a book. Like because they're feeling everything you feel, but probably more intensely and with less control over themselves and their environment than you have. Like that just speaks to me about how much we forget about our own childhoods, unless you spend some time with actual children and
totally
listen to them.
I completely agree with that. That's why I truly believe that anything can be handled if it's explained.
We just can't explain everything.
Well, not everything, but you can at least say that's right now we don't have that answer.
Yeah.
Even that's valuable.
Yeah.
Maybe you could work that. Maybe that's not worth working. But here's kind of what we know. Here's what we seem to be able to suss out about the way the structure of things work. That's valuable information. I felt like I went through my early life not knowing any of the basic things about how, one thing I've always been was always really bitter about was that no one told me about the class structure of the world.
Why would they?
Shouldn't the elites have told me?
Why would they? Why would they tell anybody that was in a shitty position in that?
Well, that's my, that's one of the big things I think about is like, well, let's be honest. Like, if we live in a bedroom community for Santa Barbara, let's just say that, not, everyone who's an adult knows that they're commuting to Santa Barbara. But let's tell our kids, we're kind of out here in the periphery of,
This is kind of nowhere, and there's not a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah. So now with that information, what do you think you should do?
Yeah. Either make this place somewhere where you can create your own opportunity or go somewhere else.
Exactly. And that's what I always thought was like, I saw all my friends going, I'm going to go to LA, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, well, I've been to those places, and I can tell you that there's not really anything that different, and yet here we have an opportunity to grow something from the ground up. We could buy the properties, we could own the infrastructure. And at some point I said, I don't think that this is what they're interested in. I'm going to have to walk away from I was trying to build some sort of team, an army or something.
That there's less deeply entrenched capital in a fixed position in Lompoc than there is in Los Angeles. Doesn't mean it's not there, but
Where else have you lived besides Ojai?
mostly just Ojai.
See, we have that parallel.
I've traveled a lot, but mostly just Ojai. I'm not against ever leaving it. I consider it more and more these days as things intensify. I have a friend who's maybe 15 years older than me, who grew up in Santa Barbara, who lives in Ojai now, and he's just telling me the other day, I ran into him, I hadn't seen him for a while, and it's just like lamenting the way things are now and just saying, this is what I saw in Santa Barbara in the 90s. Like, this is pretty much the end of what you knew as this place. And then, I used to talk to my uncle who grew up in Ojai back in the 60s, and he would tell me, I would lament it 15 years ago before I died. Like, he's like, it's not new. What you're describing is the story of growing up in small town coastal California. It just happened at different levels of intensity at different times through everywhere along the entire coast. And that's why when I come here and I ask you, how are things in Lompoc? And I feel sad that I didn't get to drive through town a little bit. I could probably still do it on the way at night or something, but like, it's been 10 years since I looked at downtown Lompoc. I'm just curious because I know it's coming and these changes are going to happen. Someone's going to take advantage of it. More likely than not, it's going to be somebody who has more capital.
And that's what I'm saying. And that's why I was always interested in building some sort of infrastructure for ourselves. Because I was like, you always end up talking to somebody who says no. But if you don't have to ask permission, you're in a whole nother...
If you own your building for your business, whole different world.
Yeah.
And that's not a financial reality for most people that start small businesses in California anymore.
Right, exactly.
And so that's why you end up with cookie cutter businesses. That's why you end up with corporate chain restaurants, because they have the ability to plug and play in any space and the capital to build it out to their needs. And so that's why everything ends up looking the same in a bad way rather than the same in a different way. Like the different Korean family donor shop with its little inflections.
Totally. And that's why I wanted to run for mayor. I wanted to say, hey, if you don't... At one point we had a city full of thrift stores.
Yep.
And I said, hey, it's something. People like thrift stores. I've traveled for thrift stores. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that travel for thrift stores. Let's say we're the thrift store capital of the Central Coast. And let's not try to be Santa Barbara or Los Alamos or these little charming little areas. And then our thrift stores close. And I said, oh no, we can't support thrift stores. We're in trouble.
Yeah. Ventura used to be people still go to Ventura for the thrift stores. They're not as good as they used to be, but Ventura used to be known.
I was in a thrift store in Ventura yesterday, just to prove it.
Did you get anything?
No, I almost did. The shirt was a little too small, and I had a buddy waiting outside. He didn't come in, so I didn't know if he wanted to wait for me, so I just kind of rushed through.
I don't go as much as I used to, but I used to be on the grind.
Well, also what happened is the thrift store got full of stuff from Walmart, and so then you were like...
And Target. And
you weren't seeing that like quality stuff from the 60s that made its way in there.
The internet did it too, because
that's true
there are pickers.
The resellers market.
Well, and then it's funny because the resellers largely put themselves out of business, because how many times can you go in there before the people that run the place see you and like, we could do that?
Yeah, totally. And I have a friend who's going to be on the show who's a
picker for a thrift store?
Picker. Well, he does it privately.
Privately, yeah.
He's had some good luck. He's found a Rolex.
Yeah.
He's
You can still get stuff. My friend Carmen, the artist, who's one of your Ojai friends that you're like, how do I know?
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets great stuff there. But she goes like every day.
She is a force, isn't she?
Yeah, she's a badass.
She really is. She does everything her own way.
Yeah. Yep. And, if she leaves Ojai, it'll be because of these sorts of changes we're talking about, and she'll make it work, but, it'll be the community's loss.
Totally. I got a text today from a guy I knew, and he's like, I'm moving to Albuquerque.
Yep.
And I was like, well, damn, that's a loss.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at, is that they're leaving, and then the big companies come and buy it up, and it's a Chipotle.
Yep. Which has its own purpose in the world. It's just, if that's all there is, it's kind of smothering.
Yeah. What's the air-conditioned nightmare?
Yeah, Henry Miller.
Yeah.
In the course of this conversation, I've thought of, in addition to the Sendak book, several other books that I'm going to probably give you later, or send to you.
Awesome.
Yeah. They might not be useful to you, but they're about things you're already thinking about. So.
Well, that's good. I need to think about things. Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about the same things over and over again, and now I'm like, there's more, I know that there's more I don't know by so much than what I do know. It's so tiny compared to.
And you'll keep doing that until you're done with those things. Until you've gotten what you need to get out of it.
Yeah, I'm moving on, I think.
Or you get bored of it.
You want to continue? Or do you feel like we've
We can talk as long as you want. I mean, we can stop now.
I'm going to go to the bathroom and we'll keep going.
We'll probably keep talking either way. That seems likely.
It seems likely. I'm going to stop it. That way we can restart because about an hour is about a good limit for
that's a good time.
Sync.
I'm going to go stretch my legs.